Okay, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Two Hearts by Phil Collins from the Buster soundtrack. I mean, I'm going over the Wikipedia page and I'm kind of realizing some really interesting things. First of all, it went to #1 on the Billboard US 100, which is something I didn't realize because I believe that Groovy did too. Or did Groovy go to #2? Yeah, Groovy went to #1 as well. I knew that. And I just didn't know that Two Hearts went to #1. That's surprising. And Two Hearts came after Groovy Kind of Love as a single. So was it kind of carrying the success of Groovy Kind of Love? I don't really know. We do know that this was after No Jacket Required, after Invisible Touch, and before But Seriously. So this would be at Phil's absolute peak, right? We have Separate Lives, we have Against All Odds, we have Easy Lover. We have everything from No Jacket. We have Invisible Touch, Throwing It All Away, Into Deep. Like, we are just kind of riding this wave that will eventually peak with But Seriously, perhaps We Can't Dance. I don't know. We're not there at the peak quite yet, but this is the top of the hill that he'll stay at for a little while. What an interestingly tall order in the 1980s, when everyone's doing 80s music like Invisible Touch and like No Jacket Required and like Thriller, to write a song that makes it sound like it comes from the 60s. Well, the easy thing to do is to hire one of the songwriters from the 60s. And that's the songwriter Lamont Dozier, who just passed away recently, RIP. Him and Phil write this song, Two Hearts. Lamont would also write You Can't Hurry Love, which Phil had done a couple years previous, and which was also a really big song. And still today, I think is Phil's probably most played song, You Can't Hurry Love. Two Hearts is an easy sequel to this song, which would make sense why he would flow them into each other when playing live, right? He would do You Can't Hurry Love into Two Hearts, which is kind of cool. But what a tall order for a movie soundtrack to say, we want to write something that sounds like it comes from this era. Because if you listen to You Can't Hurry Love, which obviously comes from the 80s from Phil's perspective, but it came from the 60s, that song sounds like a classic. But to write a new classic, that's really hard to do. And I think they did it. I think Two Hearts sounds like a classic. It was recorded in the same way, sounds very much like stuff he would have done on Face Value. We've got the Motown drum fills. We've got the oohs in the background. I mean, it's really a classic song. I'm surprised we don't hear it much on the radio anymore. I think it's because maybe it was tied to the 80s. I also just think it's interesting and so bizarre how in the 80s, after being so innovative on Invisible Touch and No Jacket Required, essentially creating a brand new sound, that then he would become famous again for a vintage sound. Why in the late 80s were people interested in old songs like Groovy Kind of Love or songs that sound old like Two Hearts? You can let me know in the comments what was happening in the late 80s. I was just a little boy, but what was happening in the late 80s that would make these two songs go to #1? Why did people want to move away from that classic 80s sound and adopt something a little bit more classic? I don't know. It's kind of cool. It also makes it so hard to defend being a Phil Collins fan, because not defend, but I mean, kind of explain Phil Collins to people, because so many people have completely individual perspectives on Phil depending on where they came into his career. So was it through Tarzan late in his career? Was it through that long-haired 80s sound like Sussudio? Was it from the hipster avant-garde music in Brand X, or more likely the hipster, weird, kind of cool, introspective prog music of early Genesis, or his more adult contemporary sound? Or was it these classic 60s songs like A Groovy Kind of Love and You Can't Hurry Love and Two Hearts? Anyway, I recently, if you follow along with the channel, I recently picked up this record on vinyl, a 12-inch copy of this record, which came with some postcards. And so go back and check that video out if you haven't seen it. We'll talk about the music video another day. I was a big fan of this video as a kid because I was like, how is he doing that? And it's classic Phil. He's always got to be funny in the videos. It's a great video. I think we'll do video reviews. After we're done with the song reviews, we'll do video reviews. I also am going to do a whole review on Buster at some point. I watched it last year. I probably should watch it again. Great movie, great soundtrack. And is this the song, the credits like plays out when they walk away from the flower stand? Is this the song or is that Groovy? I think this is the song. Anyway, great song, great soundtrack, great movie. I don't really go to listen to this that often. I probably like it better than You Can't Hurry Love. Also should mention it won a Grammy and it was nominated for an Oscar and it didn't win. And it was nominated and won a Golden Globe. So one of the many trophies that Phil has. Thanks for watching and let me know what you think about Two Hearts. Is this an important song to you? Is this one of your favorite Phil songs, or could you leave it or take it? Let me know.